Remember that scene from Interstellar where Cooper and his children drive through the endless cornfields chasing a drone? I was always fascinated by how real those fields looked, and guess what? They were totally real. And they could even be considered one of the film's most expensive props. Originally, the team planned to create the fields using CGI. Logical, possible, and convenient. But not on Christopher Nolan's watch. Today, we'll discuss how Nolan insisted on planting a whole cornfield from scratch in a location where it wasn't even supposed to grow, and how he managed to personally profit from this unique investment after the filming was complete. This is Polina Gif and Behind the Movie series, where we discuss some of the weirdest and most unexpected behind-the-scenes stories of movies. Nolan is a rather traditional director. His filmmaking style is known for his use of real locations rather than shooting in a studio, his use of experimental soundscapes, mathematically inspired images and concepts, and his preference to shoot on film rather than digital. But what usually surprises people the most is that more often than not, Nolan rejects using CGI in his movies. Despite being known for his stunning visuals and special effects, he always tries to minimize the use of computer-generated imagery. Instead, he prefers to achieve his movie magic using practical effects. Nolan has even explained that he believes there is an absolute difference between animation and photography, and no matter how advanced and sophisticated CGI is, if it doesn't come from a physical element and you haven't shot anything, then it's going to feel like animation. Nolan believes that practical effects not only make the scene more authentic, but also provide a more immersive experience for both the audience and the actors. This dedication to realism means that many of the breathtaking scenes in his films are created through sophisticated and detailed sets, real explosions, and complex stunts. Take Tenet, for example, where Nolan destroyed an airplane for a scene for which the movie eventually won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Or take the atomic explosion he created for Oppenheimer without the use of CGI. In fact, you probably know that he claimed that Oppenheimer contained no CGI shots at all. While a science fiction epic like Interstellar needed some digital effects for its space sequences, that didn't mean that Nolan abandoned his love for authenticity altogether. So, apart from being a writer, producer, director, cinematographer, and even editor, in 2014 Nolan added farmer to his resume. Corn farmer, to be specific. This is also a quick reminder that if you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button. This will really help me as a small YouTuber. The script of Interstellar called for scenes set on a farm surrounded by cornfields and mountains, a location that the team working on a movie wasn't able to find. So Nolan took inspiration from director Zack Snyder, who already grew corn crops for his 2013 film Man of Steel. Luckily, Zack had grown a bunch of corn, so I said, how much can you really grow practically? And they had done a couple hundred acres, so we looked into it. Eventually, they found a place outside of Calgary in Canada, and with a budget of $100,000, Nolan created a 500-acre corn farm. The cost of creating an actual farm was not much of a dent in the movie's budget of $165 million, but it was still a big risk. Corn is typically grown in areas with flat, fertile land, good drainage, and plenty of sunlight. So large-scale cornfields near mountains are quite rare. Agricultural experts even warned Nolan that the corn would fail to grow. But Nolan's team proceeded with the project anyway, driven by his commitment to authenticity and practical effects in filmmaking. The whole idea might sound a bit crazy and definitely risky, but it was also pretty smart. By growing his own corn, Nolan had complete control over how the fields looked. He didn't have to worry about finding the perfect location or dealing with any limitations. Instead, he could design the fields exactly as he envisioned them. Growing the corn indeed took a lot of time and effort, but Nolan and his team were dedicated. They planted, watered, and cared for the corn until it was just right. And when it was time to film, those fields were perfect. They definitely proved to be worth the risk. And it wasn't just about the corn looking good on camera. The actors needed to interact with the cornfields too. They needed to drive through them, run through them, and even hide in them. Having real cornfields gave the actors something tangible to work with, making their performances even more believable. Also, the use of real crops was integral to the thematic implications of Interstellar. The film is among Nolan's most emotional projects, because the audience must compare the grandiose version of space within Cooper's outer space adventure with the rather plain and ordinary nature of his life at home with Murph. While he's tasked with mapping out a future home for the entirety of humanity, Cooper is also forced to make a personal sacrifice that denies him the chance to have a normal life. The blissful shots of his family's cornfields, accompanied by the beautiful score by Hans Zimmer, show how difficult this decision was for him. So corn actually played a fundamental part in the film. And here's the best part of this behind-the-scenes story. After filming was done, Nolan didn't just let the corn go to waste. According to reports, Nolan and the studio gained heavy profits from the leftover corn that wasn't destroyed during the filming of the movie, making close to $162,000. So not only did the cornfields make the movie look amazing, but they also ended up being a pretty successful farming venture. In the end, we got a pretty good crop, and we actually made money on this. It's stories like these that show just how passionate Christopher Nolan is about his craft. He's willing to go the extra mile, or in this case grow an entire cornfield, to make sure his films are as immersive and realistic as possible. And honestly, I think it's one of the reasons why Interstellar feels so epic and grounded at the same time. So next time you watch that scene of Cooper driving through the cornfields, remember that those aren't just any cornfields. They are Christopher Nolan's cornfields grown specifically for that moment. And that, my friends, is the magic of filmmaking. How do you personally feel about the use of CGI versus practical effects in films? Do you think people really notice the difference? Let me know in the comments. Check out the other episodes from the Behind the Movie series and subscribe for more. I'll talk to you soon. Пока-пока!